My name is Talia Karner. I'm the author of The Third Daughter, a novel that deals with this very same subject we are going to discuss, Jewish sex trafficking in South America. And I'm excited to be moderating a virtual conversation with director Ornit Barkai from the movie Laid to Rest, which is premiering at this year's festival. We are so honored. Thank you all for joining us. So let's start. Ornit, thank you very much for producing this film. It is such an important chapter in our Jewish history, a shameful one, yet one from which we can all learn. So why don't we start with your giving us the background information of what happened in the late 19th century, early 20th century in Europe that made it possible?
Hi, everybody. Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here, and thanks, Talia, for the kind introduction. Laid to Rest buried stories of the Jewish sex trade sheds light on a bleak chapter where economic hardship in Eastern European Jewish communities left families vulnerable to exploitation. Sex trade organizations like Varsovia, Ashkenazim, and later Tzvi Migdal preyed on this desperation. Jewish pimps used a deceptive marriage ceremony called Shtila Chuppah to lure young women from their communities. While sex trafficking was global, Jewish trafficking in Argentina was a small but significant part of this broader historical reality. The film features its first published account of Rosa Mangel, a naive shtetl girl who believed she married her wealthy sweetheart, only to find out later that he was a pimp. She shared her heroic escape story with Yiddish journalist Abraham Vermont in 1899, including her own portrait photo in the newspaper. The first known reference to Jewish involvement in the transatlantic sex trade appeared in the Argentinian daily La Nación as early as 1882. French journalist Albert Londres, in his 1932 memoir, The Road to Buenos Aires, revealed the broader European scene, dedicating one chapter, only a single one chapter out of 30, to the Polacos, Yiddish-speaking Jewish sex traders from the shtetls. Argentinian director Juan Batista Stagnaro later turned this chapter into a fiction film called El Camino Sud, The Road South.
Thank you. Thank you. That leads me to the question of what were the political, legal, social, and economic conditions in Argentina, and I know it was true for Brazil as well, that allows sex trafficking to flourish like this?
Well, it was quite a global phenomenon and not necessarily Jewish. But my film deals with the Jewish sex trade within the global phenomenon. So at the turn of the 20th century, Argentina was seen as a land of opportunity, attracting European migrants. It was called la gran inmigración, the mass migration of influx of people from the old world moving to the new world to build a better life for themselves. With a skewed gender ratio due to an influx of single men, prostitution became normalized and even regulated. The imbalance, combined with legal tolerance for brothels and a corrupt legal system, allowed organizations like Varsovia, Ashkenazim, Tzvi Migdal, and other individuals loosely affiliated in the clandestine mafia-like organizations to operate freely for decades behind semi-legitimate business fronts. Close ties between clandestine sex traders and authorities made it nearly impossible for victims to break free. Through the stories of Perla Przeborska, for example, and Raquel Lieberman, published in the Yiddish press, which was published daily, I explore the complex relationship between community aid initiatives, the press, victims, the authorities, particularly a police chief named Julio Alzogaray, who took it upon himself to investigate the Jewish sex trade. His work was covered by the Jewish press.
Slavery was not legal in Argentina at the time. Actually, there were no black slaves the way they were in North America and the islands. Yet, weren't these women legally enslaved, officially registered as belonging to the pimp or to the brother?
Right. Well, while slavery was illegal, prostitution was tolerated and even regulated. Trafficked Jewish women often entered under the guise of married status, complicating any intervention. My film highlights the legal loopholes and corruption that enabled such exploitation to thrive under official oversight.
How different was Jewish prostitution in Argentina at the time compared with Italian, French, or the indigenous women who were sex workers?
Well, the French and the Italian next, and other nationalities were the majority, in fact, in the sex trade world. Jewish women, like many European women involved in sex work, were categorized under the white women trade and held to similar standards. Known as Polakas, a derogatory term meaning Polish women, they were often trafficked and kept in brothels. Unlike indigenous or street-based prostitution, the distinction lay in the cultural manipulation employed by Jewish traffickers who use religious rites to trap these women. My film opens with photojournalist Ricardo Seppi's remarkable discovery of rare photographs documenting a typical brothel on the outskirts of Buenos Aires. Through these photos of an anonymous young sex worker, other female co-workers, and male clients, Seppi reconstructs frame by frame, literally, the inner world of the historic Trata de Blancas, the white women sex trade, as it had never been seen before, actually.
My own statistical analysis of various sources pointed to at least 140,000 Jewish women enslaved by Tzvi Migdal, or Varsovia first and Tzvi Migdal later, from 1860 until World War II. I try to refute my own numbers because they sound awfully big. Do you have your own estimate?
Well, the figures vary wildly, and reputable scholars, which I interviewed, all were pioneers, researchers of this phenomenon, starting in the early 60s. Were very cautious due to the incomplete documentation. My film avoids speculative numbers, instead reconstructing verifiable stories and honoring aid efforts from organizations like Ezrat Nashim and the Association for the Protection of Jewish Girls and Women. Sensationalism around numbers risks overshadowing the human stories involved. So I tried to stay away from it. No researcher was willing to commit to any numbers for different reasons that were all explained to me and make a lot of sense.
Yes. What surprised you the most on this journey? And I know it was a very long journey, which you may want to tell us. So what surprised you the most?
Oh, well, even today, Buenos Aires bears traces of its hidden sex trade. As one of my film storytellers, photojournalist Ricardo Seppi, whom I mentioned before, observed, you can fight it, but stopping it entirely is a different story. Finding hotline cards in a New York hotel nowadays, or seeing the warning posters in Atlanta's International Airport is a reminder, a poignant reminder that this story still continues. This persistence highlights the enduring nature of trafficking, which has simply taken new forms. So when investigative journalist Isabel Vincent, who also appears in the film, says, it's not a story about Jews, it's not a story about women, it is a story that should appeal to humanity in general. I reflect on how little has changed.
Yes. Hitler pointed out at the disproportionate size of Jewish sex trafficking in Europe, let alone South America, but in Europe, as an example of the debased Jewish character. Are you concerned about exposing this shameful chapter right now at the timing in the middle of this rising anti-Semitism?
Well, I have a very short answer, but I just want to mention that Hitler aside, I feature or I mentioned briefly in my film the work of Berta Peppenheim, who actually in 1936 was interrogated by the Gestapo. She died 5 weeks later at the age of 77. She was known for her feminism, activism, and philanthropy, helping women in general, founding the League of Nations, Jewish women, the League of Jewish Women in Germany, sorry, and offering help for many women who were vulnerable for trafficking. But my focus is on the resilience of the community rather than on fueling prejudice. So far from a story of shame, my film celebrates the Jewish community's unprecedented efforts to fight back, even as a minority confronting a well-connected organization. This courage deserves to be remembered as a defiance of oppression, not as a reflection of character.
Which brings me, I have many friends in South America, and when I was doing my research, I realized that I couldn't ask them questions such as, many people in the Argentine Jewish community today are direct descendants of pimps and prostitutes. How are they dealing with that very difficult ancestry?
I don't know about many or how many. Although small, this community, the sub-community, left an indelible mark. Today, they face a complex legacy. Generations later, my film opens a conversation about history, identity, and healing that this community can hopefully lay to rest with dignity.
It took you at least a decade that I know of to produce this fabulous documentary. Can you share the process, the difficulties? I assume that it's not atypical for an independent film, but what made you not give up?
Okay, that's a bit close to home. So creating Late to Rest was a project of dedication, hard work, and trust from Brandeis University's Hadassah Brandeis Institute, and as you know, and the Women's Research Studies Center, who supported me in delving into this complex and often controversial story. The journey took unexpectedly longer than planned, and it was challenging at times, yet deeply fulfilling. Early on, I accessed unique stories and rare data to weave a tale that many didn't believe could be told in a documentary format. That was the main challenge for me to prove wrong and to succeed in doing that. It took a village to make this film. And certain individuals who were moved by the story fell in love with its storytellers and believed in its complex storyline. I was fortunate to bring together a team across countries and time zones to reconstruct this tragic tale. The story deserved to be told, and I'm grateful for this journey. And yes, independent films can take years to complete for many, many different reasons.
Yes, and I must say that I love that the fact that there were three languages involved as the film moves from one source to another. That's very, very, very true and interesting to me.
Let's say that I definitely improved my Spanish and even learned a little bit of Yiddish, which we could all read with the Hebrew letters, but many of the texts were in Yiddish. So yes, it definitely broadened my linguistic horizons.
Yes, and in your film, the indication that what brought Tzvi Migdal to its end had to do with the fights of the good Jews who fought and won. Were there other forces at play, such as the 1930 coup by a more conservative government, a military, and therefore new government? Can you tell us more about what made Tzvi Migdal really end? Or was
Right.
it like a Lieberman? What happened?
It's a mix of all these few elements, and without getting to the even more complex details of history of the Argentinian politics, change came in the 1930s when prostitution was criminalized, illegalized, and migration laws tightened. So, for one, since prostitution was illegalized, less immigrants could come, while at the same time, during the 30s, less Jews could immigrate out of Europe. But that actually occurred after the Jewish sex trade came to a stop. So a brave Jewish woman, Raquel Lieberman, was instrumental stepping forward with testimony that led to Tzvi Migdal's dismantling. Her courage is a cornerstone of my film. She's the one that on the last night, December 31st, 1991, went to the police, found a sympathetic ear of this police commissioner, Julio Alzogaray, and disclosed the names of the pimps of the Tzvi Migdal. The trial came about later. The pimps were arrested, were released, but we could say that after 1930, the Jewish sex trade, as we knew it, came to an end. Prostitution, brothel prostitution was banned, was illegalized. So, there's nothing that will stop a woman from seeing clients for money at her apartment or on the street, but brothel prostitution was illegalized. And less people, less immigrants that came over, which changed the demographics and changed the scene.
Are there any parallels between sex trafficking then and now?
Sure, nothing really changed. Sex trafficking persists globally, now leveraging digital means to recruit and exploit victims. The fight against it is complex and ongoing, with technology both aiding law enforcement and enabling traffickers. My film underscores the global nature of trafficking and the need for shared responsibility.
Thank you. What would you like the viewers to take away from the film?
I hope viewers leave with an appreciation for the dignity and resilience of these women who endured unimaginable hardship. The film is not a memorial to the struggle, but a testament to a community that defied the odds to protect their own by fighting from within.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Talia.